All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And hello all. Glad you could join us. It's going to be a great episode, and thank you. There's nothing like the Monday recorded applause to warm my heart, to make me feel as though there is a future in America. Doesn't appear to be the future that many of us would like, but it's a future nonetheless. We will today expose a lot of key pieces of the puzzle coming out of Washington. And for those of you in California, Gary Dietrich joins to talk about things happening in California that may indeed change the roadmap to the future. So there's a lot going on. I've got a leading advocate in the world of Social Security joining us. So if you have questions about the future of Social Security, this is the episode to tune into and to share. And then the future of government under this crew, which has dominated the Trump administration, by Elon Musk. Musk is not alone. He's joined by other, I'll call them tech bros, but they're really billionaire oligarchs who derive their fortune from the world of technology. And their plans for the future is what I really want to get to. Their plans for the future are radical. And you can already see the radical ways in which Musk has moved into the federal government. Well, the radical strategies for the future reflect all of the same radicalism and the same wanton destruction that we've already seen. But don't take my word for it. Take the word of Gil Duran. Now, Gil Duran has done a lot of reporting from the belly of the beast in Silicon Valley. He also worked with Dianne Feinstein. He's worked in the governor's office. So Duran has seen both sides. You know, he's worked in politics and in this world of technology. He has a very solid perspective. And his Substacks I've been reading, and they're terrific. And I'll share all that information with you when he comes on a little bit later. So you've got Alex, you've got Gil, and as I say, Gary Dietrich coming up bottom of the hour to talk politics. It's going to be good. Kim is here, and she,
Kim,
of course, starts the week by giving me an incredibly hard time, which is, I guess, some way that she kind of like feels invigorated. She likes to like just bust me and bust me until I say, okay, look, whatever you want. But it's great to have her Yeah, chit. I'm drinking from the chit mug.
Well, Lucy's really your favorite McAllister today, boy.
Yeah, chit is
chitting it. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, it's true. But let me just have a quick look. It's a Coachella Valley coffee. And by the way, I saw the Coachella Valley coffee tent with all of the Coachella Valley coffee folk this weekend. On Friday, I just went down for the day for tennis.
Oh.
Yeah. And they're there with a huge line to get Coachella Valley coffee. So you don't need to wait on the line. All you need to do is it's so good. Go to their website, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, and you get our discount, Mark T, at checkout, 10% off. Again, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com is the best coffee in the world. Kim likes the tea.
Love it.
You wonder what gets Kim all stirred up, ready to fight with everybody? That is it. She gets it off of the tea. It's the sustenance. It's what drives her. It gives her the gasoline in her engine. It's CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. And again, the discount code is MarkT. And you can get anything you want on the website, and you'll get 10% off everything. Now, yes, thank you, Tony, because that is the website's got all the tasting notes and stuff like that. My favorite McAllister, I did see it, particularly today, gaining even more territory on Kim McAllister, is Lucy McAllister. Yeah. She is one of the great supporters of the show, and she gives us a $20 super sticker. Yeah, do love my Lucy McAllister. Welcome to Arizona time, says Peter Newton. We don't spring or fall. It is Salvador Dali time when it is 120 degrees. We got little over a quarter of an inch of rain on Friday. The first rain since August of last year. Wow. Talk about a drought. This changing the clocks is horrible. It's just horrible. I mean, it's horrible. It's a World War II throwback. It's so classic America that we hang on to. There's so much great about America, and then there's so much effed up about America. And one of the effed up things is that we can't seem to let go of something that no longer serves us. And not only that, it's actually a negative from a health standpoint in a huge way. People have heart attacks and strokes. And I mean, there are all of these truly negative outcomes as a result of something as simple as flipping the clock ahead. And it is simple to flip the clock, but what's happening in your body is less simple. When the doctor comes, we'll talk about it. But although it seems as though we always hear about it every time we spring ahead and fall back, that we're going to go back to some kind of standard time, and then we never do.
Yeah, because
also heard a slip this
which
weekend.
Way it's going to go, right?
What's that?
Everyone fights over which way should it stay.
Which way should it go? Exactly. Right. Also heard a slip this weekend, but I like it. They ain't tech bros, but see themselves as tech lords with an iPhone for a police box. That's from Peter Newton. I like tech lords because it's a little less. There's something about tech bros that feels kind of cool. Like they're bros, they're tech. I like tech lords. It's a little more accurate. We're going to talk Social Security in a couple of minutes. Before I do, I did want to get to a couple of things that, typically I try to get to something that's not politics to start the show. But
The Mark Thompson Show.
I don't know if I can honor that today because I did want to let you know about what is talked about increasingly, and that is recession. I mean, and real economic hard times. Donald Trump inherited a fairly solid economy, the best economy in the developed world, and it appears that he just wants to screw with stuff, right? He wants to flex when it comes to Canada, when it comes to Mexico. So he's got this sort of pugnacious quality, like he wants to start a fight all the time, and that's what he appears to be doing. And the markets are reacting to the herky-jerky nature of everything. One of the great reasons that America is such a treasure of investment worldwide is because we have a fairly solid both economy and political system, and obviously we are a great engine of economic growth, but the solidity of the economic system and of the political system is now very much in question. So for the first time, you're hearing questions about, are we going to be moving into a recession? We're seeing markets all over the place, generally way down. And Trump himself has now been questioned by the right-wing media about perhaps a looming recession. Tony has, from this weekend, Trump being questioned on Air Force One about the recession. Here's a little bit.
Are you worried about a recession? Maria Bartiromo asked you and you kind of hesitated.
I'll tell you what, of course you hesitate. Who knows? All I know is this: we're going to take in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs, and we're going to become so rich, you're not going to know where to spend all that money. I'm telling you, you just watch. We're going to have jobs, we're going to have open factories, it's going to be great, and the plane is landing. And
yeah, you're not even going to know where to spend all that money. It's just going to be so great. I mean, he is just the great BS machine. It is. It's remarkable to watch that guy. I mean, by now, isn't everybody on to the way it works? Maybe not. Here's what's happened in the markets. We've seen in the last, this is the 1 month Dow, and it is, it's down. It's down substantially. But look at the economy that he inherited and now how it's just fallen off a ledge since he started with tariff talk and since he started with the back and forth on Ukraine, sort of the destabilization of things both domestically and worldwide has produced show him the 3-month graph, if you would, please. Yeah. So you can see when he took office and now what's happening as these policies are increasingly getting airtime, getting more and more into the zeitgeist. I mean, you're seeing a dramatic drop in the stock market. Now, the stock market is not the only index by which you evaluate an economy's health, but it does speak to the dramatic way in which investors see Trump as real trouble. And typically, a guy like Trump, right, rich guy surrounded by other rich guys, he's populated his administration with more rich people, billionaires, than any other administration in history. You'd think that he would take care of Wall Street. And at some point, he may. But it doesn't appear as though he will in the short term. Trump's going to be so rich, says Stephen Michaels, the country will be poor. Yeah, it's he doesn't really have an economist's mind. He doesn't really know what he's doing. He is, I think, just working the levers and the dials that are there in the Oval Office. And of course, it is in service of a tax cut, without question. He's looking for money. One of the places he's looking for money, and this is the ridiculous thing, is Social Security. And I want to get to Social Security now and a conversation about Social Security and the future of Social Security as we continue. But I wanted to give you a feel for what's happening and how Trump himself is acknowledging publicly that we may have to go through some tough times to get to the promised land. And that certainly wasn't something he was saying on the stump. He promises, blue skies and sunshine. And now it is really a dismantling of government, destruction of everything, handing it all over to the richest man in the world. And we've seen now the markets begin to respond to his inability to really commit to any kind of fiscal policy moving forward. So it's flaw by design, says Flowers and Thorns. Perhaps. I don't think Trump wants to see the markets fall off a ledge, but he definitely has a death grip on these tariffs. And the tariffs are recessionary, without question. They're also arbitrary. It's a bizarre way in which they're being applied. Why Canada and Mexico? There's a solid agreement in place that Trump himself engineered during his last administration. And all of a sudden, he's not happy with that. In other words, how they get out from under tariffs is completely, it's not articulated. And I don't understand how it's even been communicated in any way. Like, as soon as this happens, we'll lift these tariffs. You don't get that. You get a different version all the time. They're imposing tariffs on us. We're going to impose tariffs on them. You begin to see how Trump himself doesn't really see the picture clearly either. So this is to be continued, but to make a point of it, recession is being spoken of in the Oval Office. So.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I'm so excited this guy is joining us. He's a great advocate for Social Security, and more than just being an advocate, he's just so knowledgeable about the Social Security system. And I think a lot of the myths about Social Security system and a lot of the realities can be spoken of by our next guest. And, I believe you can read his stuff. We'll talk to him about exactly where you can find his stuff. But wow, I'm excited to have him. How about it for Alex Lawson, please, everyone? Hi, Alex.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. There are so many aspects of the Social Security and Medicare world that I think we may not understand. There may be subtleties. There's one big lie I know, and you can let me know if this is right. But there's a sort of pot of gold that's viewed as federal monies that goes to Social Security that somehow is affecting the deficit. And the reality is, I think the Social Security system really, it exists independent of anything that would affect the deficit. Isn't that right?
I mean, every single person in this country understands that, right? I mean, nobody gives us anything when it comes to Social Security, right? You see it coming out of your paycheck. It's our money. Nobody in Washington, D.C. gives us Social Security. We pay for it during our working lives, and it's there for us when we need it, when we retire, if we face a life-changing injury or illness and can no longer work, for the surviving family members in the death of a breadwinner. This is a system that for 89 years after it was formed in response to a crisis caused by the Wall Street billionaires of the time, selling the same snake oil that you were just talking about, Mark, the same chaos that they say, oh, yeah, we got this all under control. Don't worry. We understand the markets. The markets are not understandable. So the last time that they caused the market to collapse, 2008, we saw all of these things that could never happen before happen, right? Because Wall Street is not on our side. And that's why working people formed Social Security after the Great Depression, so that we could have a system that was ours, just ours. We don't need Wall Street involved. We don't need Washington, D.C. involved. It's the people working together. And let me tell you how that's gone for us. For 89 years, through war and peace, through boom and bust, through sickness and health, not a single payment has ever been missed. It's the rock that we can count on. And I always confidently predicted that guarantee into the future. And now, for the first time in the 15 years that I've done this, in the 50 years that the president of Social Security works, Nancy Altman, has done this, are we now saying that the guarantee is in trouble? The cuts and wrecking ball that Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, and his little puppet, Donald Trump, have taken through the Social Security Administration are large enough, destructive enough, and just random enough, right? They have no idea how this system works. And what we're seeing causes us to say there will be service interruptions. There already are now, especially in disability and SSI, but there will be throughout the system. People's checks will not get to them. And then when they turn around and say, oh, well, I'll call, they shut down the call centers. They fired the people who answer the phones. They're closing your local Social Security office. They go on TV and they're like, don't worry about it. We'll replace it with AI. Have you ever tried to call Google or Facebook or any of these other Silicon Valley companies? Not being able to get a hold of a person is part of the design. That's what they want to do to Social Security. And it's all to create this cover of chaos in service of what you opened with, Mark, which is an enormous tax handout to the richest people in the history of the world, led by Elon Musk. $4.5 trillion directly into their pockets, directly out of our pockets. That's why Donald Trump went on TV and told the big lie about Social Security, the authoritarian's playbook, an easily disprovable lie. Oh, yeah, 300-year-olds getting Social Security benefits. No, they're not. Social Security is 90 years old. This country's not even that old. Of course, that's not true. Social Security benefits are automatically turned off when a person hits 115 years old. They have to then prove that they're still alive, which can cause hardship. But that was the point. It's a big enough lie that under that cover of chaos, they're going to be able to pick your pocket and hope that you don't notice.
He's one of the best liars I've ever seen in a public forum anyway. And he just leaned into that, which I think many Americans have a sense of just generally, like people are ripping off the system by, pretending there's somebody else, by jacking Social Security numbers. Look, some of these things don't even make any sense. People are saying they're 300 years old and they're still getting a check, whatever it might be. Of course, I've talked about it over and over, the fact that was, this is a system within Social Security to make sure that people like that, that those Social Security submissions are not paid on. But the idea that he could so unapologetically lean into that lie, which has been, again, debunked over and over by yourself and others, it speaks to how committed they are to Social Security being on the chopping block. In fact, the one big takeaway, and there were a few, but the one big takeaway from that address to a joint session that he had was they are going after Social Security. You don't spend 5 minutes talking about Social Security and putting all these lies out there unless you're really going after it. It was always the third rail of American politics for all the reasons that you've articulated. We paid into it, and it's rescued us from so much. So many people depend on it. It seems extraordinary to me that it will, and it already has been diminished. I mean, they've closed a bunch of these Social Security offices. I'm looking at the stories right now across the country, and there have been substantial layoffs at SSA. You lead an organization of activists and advocates, and what can be done to push back on this?
A lot. And, I do think that that Social Security they're going to choke on it. They don't understand how, because these are two men who are not real. They're not normal, right? Donald Trump grew up with like golden toilets. Elon Musk grew up with like an emerald mind, right? They don't understand that for millions of Americans, the Social Security check that they've earned is the only thing that they have. The only thing that keeps a family member in their home, the only thing that keeps a family member or themselves from having to cut their medication in half in order to pay the rent. They just don't understand. And they absolutely don't understand how people could live on $15,000 a year, right? That we're talking about the most modest of benefits and how the interruption of even one of those checks can kill a person. They don't understand that. So they don't understand the ferocity with which the American people are going to fight back against these attacks. So obviously you call your elected officials. They've now shut down the ability to get a hold of Social Security. So if you are worried about a check not reaching you or something looks or smells fishy, you call your member of Congress, because that's the only thing that we've got left now that they have decimated so much of the Social Security Administration. Your federal elected representatives are the people who are in charge of ensuring you receive the benefits that you deserve. That goes for veterans benefits as well, where they fired 80,000 workers from the VA.
It's extraordinary.
So call your members of Congress and tell them reverse course, hands off Social Security, reverse course, obviously, but also keep in mind that that's who you call if you're worried about you for yourself or your loved ones. But also we know that politicians are lagging indicators. There is no cavalry coming from Washington, D.C., right? We know that. The people have to lead. The bravery comes from us getting into the streets, raising our voices together. I think going to all of the Social Security offices, we've got dozens of events coming up. You can find information at socialsecurityworks.org. Our allies across the movement. But if we don't have one near you, set one up, because your Social Security office is at risk. Get your neighbors involved. Don't do it alone. The key to fighting this authoritarianism is solidarity. So reach out to us, get organized. But you can lead in the fight back. If something's not happening in your area, pick up, and you're able, pick up the flag and cry, rally to me. If you go to a Social Security office and you tell, your neighbors, the folks in your church, the people who you are in community with, to meet you there, call the press, call your member of Congress, tell them to show up, you will get a news story, because Social Security is that fundamental to the fabric of our country. So it is on us to ensure that DOJ chokes on Social Security as they're trying to steal it from us, that they are reaching their hands in our pockets and trying to steal our money. It's up to us to slap their hand away and show them that they're never going to take our Social Security from us, because it's ours. We earned it, and we're not going to let them steal it.
I've noted before that it's one of the most efficient agencies in Washington. So if you're going after inefficiency and waste and fraud, it's really not the place you start or even include. I mean, it's bizarre, So it makes me wonder, what is the end game here? Do they want that money that's already there at SSA?
So you're exactly right. I mean, Social Security should be the model if you're looking for efficiency, right? I mean, we're talking about trillions of dollars delivered over 90 years, never missed a single payment, all done for less than 1% administrative costs. less than 1 penny. And by the way, we pay for all that too. The government doesn't pay for the Social Security offices that they're closing. We do. The government doesn't pay for the Social Security employees that they're firing. We do, out of our premiums. So Social Security is the picture of efficiency, vanishingly small amounts of fraud, waste, and abuse in the system. Private industry would be absolutely over the moon if they could get those same rates. But even then, the vanishing small amount, we have an inspector generals whose job it is to root that out. And they deliver a report every year, and they say, what we need is more people working at SSA. We need a bigger budget in there. What Elon Musk did is he fired all of the inspector generals, and then they got rid of the people whose job it was to oversee. So why? What's the end game? It's really simple, but also like so boring that I always I want to preface it that way. But it's easy to find. Just turn on the financial press, right? So turn on CNBC, Bloomberg, somewhere where Wall Street's talking to itself, and then you will hear the entire game. To give a $4.5 trillion tax handouts to billionaires, Wall Street demands a blood sacrifice of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. If they don't get that, then the 10 and 30-year bond yields will spike, and they will spend segment after segment after segment talking about how they need to give a tax handout to the richest people in the world, and then ensure that that is quote unquote paid for in Wall Street parlance by cutting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And through that lens, if you just listen to CNBC, the game makes perfect sense. As long as Wall Street demands that blood sacrifice of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid in order to give tax handouts to the richest people in the world, that is the tune that Republicans will dance to. That's the whole kit and caboodle. That's what they're doing right now.
So skip me ahead in this movie 18 months. If Social Security works and the organizations that you work with at Social Security works, I mean, you put together this great coalition, and the people don't sufficiently push back. What do we look like in 18 months?
If we lose, people die. It's as simple as that. People will die. If we win, even from now, people might die. We're talking about people who can no longer work because they're disabled. They're going to be the ones who are hit the hardest right away at Social Security. We also are talking about the destruction of Medicaid through the reconciliation process. You're seeing that being a big story this week with government funding. If Wall Street gets what they want, I keep calling it a blood sacrifice. What you can call it whatever you want. The reason I use that is because I want people to understand what it will mean. People will get sick. People will die. Medicaid isn't like money that, you know, all these people are getting rich on, living high on the hog on their Medicaid is healthcare. Medicaid pays for over 50% of nursing home care in this country. Medicaid pays for people with dementia in memory care. Medicaid pays for children to be born. It's seniors, children, people with disabilities. It's healthcare. You take that away from people, what happens? They get sick, they die. Social Security is the revenue, the income that people live on. Either in retirement, it's replacing some of the wages that they earned during their working lives, or if a person's disabled or they're surviving children in the death of a breadwinner, part of their wages. You take away people's wages, they have nothing to live on. They can't eat. They can't pay rent. They can't pay the bills. They will get sick. They will die. What we've seen, this isn't a guess. What we've seen when Republicans attack Social Security previously through many different, it's one goal. Again, Wall Street demands it: destruction, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. They always try to
they tried to privatize it. Bush tried to privatize it to the younger Bush. So, I mean, it's something that they've taken a crack at or a swipe at a few times along the way.
Exactly. Reagan had one policy in called continuing disability reviews. It sounds, what it was just ripping benefits away from people with disabilities. And what happened is people killed themselves. People died and were driven into despair that they were going to lose the only thing that they had to live on, and they couldn't face that. And they committed suicide. And it happened in such numbers. Your listeners should Google this episode. What happened when Reagan did this. It was so horrible that the Congress in Reagan's time, Republicans and Democrats, unanimously got together and overturned Ronald Reagan's policy because it was so cruel and it led so directly to devastation and death. So what happens in 18 months if we lose? I am telling you very confidently, harm, sickness, and death in America in a way that is so deeply un-American that it will shock people that this is the country that we are living in right now. But I mean, that's what Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing right now.
The human toll is incalculable because we just don't know how deep the cuts are going to be. But from the looks of it, I mean, and they've gone at it with the same wrecking ball that they've gone at all these other public institutions. It's an extraordinary thing. I really never thought I would see it in my lifetime. I want to visit this with you again, and I want to encourage people to go to your website, socialsecurityworks.org. There's a lot of information there, and there are also efforts to organize. So check it out, socialsecurityworks.org. Tony's got it up there on the screen. I so appreciate you putting us on your schedule because I think this is a very important subject, obviously, but it's a critical time, I think, in America. And as I say, it's a time I never thought I'd see.
Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to end with this. Just remember that even if we lose some, through adversity, solidarity grows. And when we raise our voices together, we will always win. We can rebuild after we defeat the billionaires. So thank you so much for having me on.
Alex Lawson, everybody, from Social Security Works. Thanks, Alex.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Right on, everybody. It's a Monday. Everybody's a little bit slow moving because of this whole spring forward garbage that we still do. Why can't Gary Dietrich fix that? Him and his Sacramento buddies. Why can't they get in there and do something about this? My God. Thanks, everybody, for jumping in. Kim is here. Tony is here. We continue on. I was going to, Tony and Kim, I didn't even mention this to you, either one of you. But
thanks, Tony.
I was going to do the unboxing.
Kim, how are you?
Today,
Yeah. Please do it. Please do it. Can we do it right now?
YouTube sent us the plaque for having 100,000 subscribers. I think
110 now.
We have 110 now. But
let me see the plaque. Show it to me.
I want to talk to Gary. So after Gary, I'll do the unboxing. But it's very exciting for us.
Oh man!
I know, it's cool. It's very cool, and and they reached out to me. Like I didn't. It was neat. So it just came in, and I'll do that unboxing after Dietrich. But smash the like button if you would.
Smash
it's free.
with your iron rod.
Yeah, smash it with your iron rod. Smash it like a boss. That thumbs up.
Smash it with your iron
rod.
rod.
Make it count. Make it count. And please subscribe to our show if you haven't, and share the show across your social media, or maybe a segment from the show. We drop, for example, Gary's segment. If you like something that Gary and I touch on in the next few minutes, you can share that show later today. Tony will break it out as a separate video. And the more you share it, the more we increase our footprint. So super appreciate everybody being aggressive about sharing stuff. I think that's how we grew the audience. So thank you very much for that. Now, all right, now.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This guy is the political analyst for iHeart Media, also across the spectrum of CBS television stations. He is the great Gary Dietrich. And, you are there in Sacramento where you folks who are watching and listening in California, that's where decisions are made. And I want to get to a lot of the stuff that's happening in Washington and the federal government. But just because you are so connected there with the world of politics in California, tell me how we are hearing more, and I saw this piece in the Chronicle, San Francisco Chronicle today. We're hearing more about how constituents are wanting to ask their representatives to make noise amid this intense, amazing, unprecedented, many would say, wrecking of a government and government services. What do you do when you're the minority party? It's weird. You're in California, you're the dominant party, the Democrats, but with the feds, you're the minority party. What are you hearing?
Well, first, Mark, let's get with the really important stuff first. A huge congrats on 100,000 YouTube.
Oh, thank you, pal.
And as your compadres said there, Tony and Tim, you are the ultimate master of the universe when it comes to the media and broadcasting. And that was a spectacular tease, my friend.
Okay.
So we expect to see that plaque prominently displayed on that shelf behind you by next Monday when I am on. Okay.
I promise you that. Thank you. You're part of it. You're a part of it, my friend.
Maybe even little plastic ones people can hang from their keychains or something. I don't know.
Oh, that's an idea. I like you're always thinking.
Okay.
I like that.
Signed ones by Mark Thompson, available 8x10 glossies. Okay, so as far as here's one of the things that I was just thinking about this last week, Mark, that is really quite an irony when you think about it. Democrats in Washington are now experiencing, frankly, the exact same sense of powerlessness and frustration that Republicans have here in Sacramento for the last decade plus, right? I mean, we have not had in California a Republican governor since Arnold Schwarzenegger. And by a lot of estimations, he certainly wasn't, by his own admission, anything conservative. In fact, he's been a big anti-Trump guy, as you know, from the beginning. But it is really remarkable to watch a party in the distinct minority. I mean, Republicans, there's a super majority, a 2/3 majority for Democrats, as you know, in both houses of the California legislature, added on top of Gavin Newsom and a, center left leaning California Supreme Court. So it is really quite an interesting political phenomenon to watch a minority party try to navigate that. It is not easily done. A lot of it happens through what Democrats are doing now. I mean, lawsuits, public protests, online efforts, media outreach. Those are the kind of tools that people have. But to your intro on this particular question, Mark, there's a huge uproar amongst Democratic constituents around the country, including here in California, that, quote unquote, their people in Congress aren't doing enough. Well, the simple political realities, Mark, you know this, they have very, very few limited levers of power to do anything with. And I think it's really a conundrum for Democrats in Congress, because part of them wants to just admit that, and some are saying, look, quit filling up our phone lines, because they're getting record phone calls saying, why aren't you doing more? They're trying to explain, look, I know for decades you got used to us having at least one house of this Congress in our control, if not the White House. We don't have that anymore. And there's very little practically on a policy level that we can do.
So that suggests that there are no impediments to whatever federal agenda Trump and Musk want to impose upon this country. And it's been a radical agenda thus far, Gary. I mean, I think by any yardstick. And yet it seems, and this just might be the feeling, that the GOP is better at being the minority party than the Democrats are. Now, is that just my perception of things? And that is to say, the right is better at screaming and yelling than the left is.
Well, to be really honest about it, Mark, they kind of had to fashion that when for a long time they did not have power, right? I mean, trying to find a Republican president and 2 Republican houses, go back the last 50 years plus and try to find that in your history books, right? That is quite the anomaly. So I think, to be really candid about it, they've had more experience doing it, right? I mean, I think there is still, and Van Jones was saying this on CNN over the weekend. He said, hey, we just, in his words, quote unquote, the party is just screwed up, right? I mean, there's just not good experience in being the opposition party. That's part of it. It's just the realities of that. When you had Nancy Pelosi, I mean, she was the kingmaker, right? And queenmaker for a long, long time. And everybody looked to her as kind of the fixer, right? When there was a problem, even if you had a Republican in the White House, she was going to find a way to undermine him. Now, there is one caveat to the quote unquote powerlessness in Washington. And that is that some people, say is now archaic rule in the Senate, but that 60 vote majority required in the U.S. Senate to get legislation out if there's a, filibuster, that is the saving grace for a minority party in Washington. It really is. And we saw that at play last week when Democrats by 45 votes refused to go along with the trans individual sport folks, in women's sports. And they killed it because of that, because the Republicans could not get 60 votes. Now, it depends on who you're talking to. At various points in time, the majority party always hates that rule. The minority party loves it because it's the only lever of power they have. Republicans are wielding it. It's something, for example, does not exist in most state capitals, including Sacramento. And right now, that is the backstop for Democrats in Washington.
I just want to stay in Washington for a second and ask you about the government staying open. There is finally there's some focus on that because explain the dynamics of how we need to, of what needs to happen for the government to remain open, for it or to possibly close. And the only thing I will say is there is a portion of those who are in power who don't value government. You can see it by the way they're dismantling it, and they would be perfectly happy to see the government close down for a while.
Well, so much of budgeting, for many years now, has happened through the so-called CR process, the continuing resolution. All right. In other words, rather than getting a fiscal year's budget passed, which can be really tough to do because you have to, again, get over that 60 vote threshold in the Senate if Democrats don't go along. And of course, in recent budget cycles, Johnson and others have had to have people from the other side of the aisle help get a budget through. So that's what they're up against this Friday. It's a tough slog. There's not even agreement amongst Republicans between the House and the Senate, let alone Democrats. And right now, Jeffries in the House has said basically, don't count on any votes from our people, period. Zero. All right. So that's what Johnson's up against in the House and Thune is up against in the Senate. They got this week to figure it out. Trump is starting to put some pressure on people, including very conservatives who want to see that continuing resolution include budget cuts and stuff. And he's saying, no way. We want what they call it a clean CR, which simply means you keep the budgets as they are right now for every department through the rest of this fiscal year through September. We'll see if that comes to pass.
I mean, there's a weird aspect to that, too, because here you are slashing government, talking about how you want to go after spending. And I think it's completely reckless. It's devoid of any kind of reasoning. They've just gone on and firing people and closing offices. It's completely reckless and awful. But that's my opinion. But what you see with the CR is a continuing funding of all of these different aspects of government that you're closing down.
Well, the thing about it is, be careful what you wish for in terms of political power, because right now the Republicans have it all. And if they don't if they don't keep the government open, let's say it shuts down, right? And all of a sudden you got big, high profile things. Like remember when Yosemite Park had to shut down, period. God rest my mom. 10 years ago, I was going to take my mom up Yosemite. It closed down the very weekend we were going to go, right? I mean, there's a host of things that happen when, quote unquote, the government shuts down. It doesn't shut down completely, but the so-called non-security, non-life threatening things do close down. That's a big political no-no. And most parties, including Schumer, by the way, in the Senate, does not want to see that happen because you're really rolling the dice when you do that in terms of who gets the political blame.
That's the sleight of hand that the GOP is so good at, blaming the Democrats for everything bad. I mean, it's remarkable. As you say, maybe it was out of necessity, but there's a high art to the way that the Republicans blame Democrats for everything. And a government shutdown, which, as you say, they control everything in Washington. I mean, it seems like the blame for any shutdown would fall clearly at their feet, and yet somehow it's like a James Bond villain getting away in the last act. I mean, it's just remarkable how they do it, and you actually explain it well when you say they're just better at it because they've had to do it for longer.
Well, and the thing about it is, that line of argumentation, that is, it's the Democrats' fault, that string is going to find its end here before too long, right? I mean, Trump has said that now about inflation. It's still a Biden problem we inherited, but you can only do that for so long. I will guarantee you that by the time we hit this summer and they start looking at, just a year away from the midterms, there's a strong political recognition. Hey, you know what? We're going to rise or fall on our own merits. We're going to fall on our sword, or we're going to yield it. And that's why people like Carville, James Carville, in the last week have said, if you've heard there's a lot of brouhaha about this, even inside the Democratic Party, when he said in his own, Louisiana way, let's just play possum. Just step back from this whole mess, this Trump mess, this congressional mess. Let them collapse under our own weight. That's currently the Carville prescriptive. We have no power anyway. Doing things like holding up paddles during the, joint address of Congress, that didn't get us anywhere, obviously. So just let the whole thing collapse, to some degree, and they'll take the blame for it, and then we'll we'll start picking up the pieces, maybe take the House back next year in the midterms. So there's, widely varying political prescriptions right now, but that's one of them floating around out there.
Yeah, no, that's gotten a lot of oxygen. I disagree with it. I mean, I just think that, that you've got to make noise. I just don't think, the one thing the GOP, and we've talked about and touched on how, and I'll get to Newsom here in a second, but we've talked about how good they are at it. The one thing they don't do is just sit around and say nothing and let the Democrats shoot themselves in the foot. No. You hear from them. You've got to squawk. You've got to make noise. And I think it's incumbent upon the opposition party, in this case, the Democrats, to do that. So I think Carville is, I love the way he says stuff because he's got that Louisiana thing, which just makes everything sound so good. But the reality is, I think he's full of it on this. I want to ask you about Gavin Newsom. So Newsom, who, for some people is the future of the Democratic Party, as the Democratic Party looks for a figure who maybe comes out of governorship and, arises to become a national figure. Josh Shapiro's another one. I mean, there are others. Newsom did something that I don't know if I'm on board with this, and maybe we can hash this out right now. He has this podcast thing. This is his new thing. He's going to have his own podcast. And the hook is, in addition to it being Gavin Newsom's podcast, he's going to have people from not only the other side of the aisle, but some from like even the alt-right on, and he'll talk to them and they'll be his guests. So he has Charlie Kirk on, and Charlie Kirk is really alt-right. And I mean, he's conspiracy theorist, he's alt-right, he's got some very extreme views. And I wanted to touch on this because in my judgment, and I always hear, you don't want to legitimize these people by going on fill in the blank, Fox News, whatever the OAN, et cetera. And I see that, but I always feel as though you should go on and at least tell the story if you're an effective communicator, as Newsom is. I feel as though I have to say, having Charlie Kirk on really did feel as though he was legitimizing him in a way that I found for the first time disturbing. I wonder if you could speak to it. Yeah.
Well, Mark, I think you're onto something here. This Gavin Newsom podcast, remember, he already had one spinning around out there that nobody paid any attention to. He's got this new one, it's called, what a great name, This is Gavin Newsom. Well, if you look at his first episode, there's a lot of people in his own party that are saying, hey, you know what? I don't like this new version of Gavin Newsom. To your point, Mark, I mean, they did feel like, I mean, of all people to have a Charlie Kirk on, right, as your first guest, I mean, it would have been a lot better for Newsom to have Ron DeSantis on, or even Sean Hannity, than Charlie Kirk in a lot of Democrats' minds. And to your point, and I just think it is a high-risk political play for Newsom. There's no question about it. Now, some people feel like he's just kind of desperate to carve out his own lane for 2028. Kamala Harris is still spinning around out there. If you look at polls amongst Democrats, she's still the number one choice for 28. Of course, Shapiro in Pennsylvania is sitting out there. There's going to be a whole host. You've got interesting people now inside the Democratic Party saying, look, we need to abandon this whole establishment politician thing. We need to be looking at a Mark Cuban or even a Stephen A. Smith from ESPN, who's all of a sudden showing up talking politics on everything from The View to everything else. And so, I don't know what Gavin's actually thinking about this, but it was certainly high risk to come on your very first time out of the box with Charlie Kirk, and then just completely apparently impromptu in a response to Charlie Kirk asking him to come out as the highest profile Democrat in the country. against trans athletes in women's sports. And
Yeah.
that shockwaves through this capital here in Sacramento, of course, as well as DC.
Yeah, we had it in the chat. Someone asking how was that taken by those in Sacramento? You say shockwave, so people were blown away by that.
Oh yeah, a lot of people in his own party. I mean, look, there's an LGBT, excuse me, you know what I'm talking about. LGBT. I think the lack of sleep is getting to me this morning too, Mark.
It's okay. Yeah.
There's the caucus that represents trans folks in Sacramento. They were aghast, as were many nonprofit groups, as were a lot of his fellow Democrats, both here and in Washington. And then all of a sudden, a couple of days later, out of Washington, you're hearing, yeah, you know what? New York Times poll says 80% of people agree with that position nationally, including 2/3 of Democrats. We got to rethink this. So you're starting to see analysts on CNN talk about this. I don't know. I mean, I think for Newsom, this is either going to be seen as prescient and we got to make some changes here, or you just doomed yourself for 28.
The tacking toward the middle that is talked about increasingly in Democratic circles, and of course, this is the debate. Do you tack toward the middle? Are we a more moderate country ultimately than the left would seem to understand? Or do you lean in to the government can do things for you, show, as the left can, the effective ways in which the government can actually work and create a better America? That's a debate within the Democrats that continues, Gary, and I don't know that I mean, so Newsom obviously with that move is tacking to the middle, right? He's saying, hey, it doesn't make sense. I agree.
Absolutely, no doubt that he is. I mean, there's no other way to interpret. Why would you have people like MAGA and Kirk on, right? And that he didn't give me the last one of those folks. When Newsom was asked, well, what's your guest list going to look like? He said, well, we're going to have them from both sides of the aisle, but take a look at the CPAC speaker list this week. That was a couple weeks ago. And people were like, what? Are you serious? So there's no doubt that Newsom is trying to find a lane that he feels like is going to be most advantageous in 28 and that he feels like can actually succeed.
I have one. Is this right? VD Hertz says the NASDAQ is down 800 points, almost 4%. Ouch. On the way out here, tell me, the tariff thing, which Trump seems to have a death grip on, that really will, I don't want to say tank the economy, but it's going to affect the economy in a seismic way. It may bring on a recession. It could single-handedly, that move, bring on a recession. Tell me how that's going to wash down politically and whether or not you think, and I know it's hard to say because handicapping what Trump's going to do is really impossible, but whether he's really going to keep that death grip or in the face of that drop on the NASDAQ, et cetera, might he begin to loosen?
Well, we've already seen, right? He put another month-long pause on a bunch of the tariffs he was going to put onto Canada and Mexico. Now he says April 2nd is the big drop-dead date when he's going to unleash all holy hell of tariffs. And that's not going to just be on the countries we've talked about so far, but he says across the board, anybody who's done us dirty or we don't have equity in terms of trade, that's going to happen. We'll see if that happens. He said in his joint address to Congress last week, yeah, there's going to be short-term disruptions. We know there's going to be some pain, but it'll be short-lived. Economists are all over the map on this. Some say it's going to be disastrous. Others say, no, it'll be bumpy, but we can survive it. But then you have politically, Mark, to your point, I'll end with this. You got the head of the UAW coming out and saying, you know what? We need these tariffs on Canada and Mexico because a lot of our U.S. jobs have gone to those two places. Now, you already had, remember, the head of the Teamsters getting behind Trump to some degree last fall, but the UAW was still solidly in the Biden-Harris camp, and all of a sudden today, coming out in support of tariffs. So this is all over the map politically. Mark, I'll be really honest with you. I don't think we have a good sense yet how this is going to flash out and with any certainty, both on the economic side or the political side.
And lastly, these unions are seeing, as you say, they were supportive of Trump. They were split actually depending on the union in terms of their support for Trump. But now they're seeing what is clearly a view toward the unions at the federal level. Federal workers are being hit by the fact that Trump and the Trump administration are trying to get rid of the federal union. So he's a union buster, and so is Musk is a huge union buster. So this is going to be a wild ride, and I'm glad you're along for it. Thanks again for being part of our success. Love visiting with you on Mondays, my friend.
Thanks a lot, Mark, and continued success, my friend.
Thank you. Gary Dietrich, everybody. Love it. And Gary is sponsored. That segment is sponsored by Bill Campbell, our pal at Remax Gold. And if you're in Northern California, or you're maybe going to Northern California, you need to look at relocating there, or you're leaving the area, and you want a highly respected real estate professional, Bill Campbell is that guy. Remax Gold. You can call or even text Bill. The number is 530-448-7474. 530-448-7474. It's Bill Campbell at Remax Gold.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, I was surprised by that NASDAQ thing. I just saw that in the chat. Pretty incredible. Wild Ride is exactly what this will be, everyone. It will be, I think, a time of great uncertainty. And if you're in the markets, that's something that is troubling to you. That's why you're seeing the markets drop. Uncertainty is bad. But if you're in the real life part of these programs that lift you up, it's a very dark time. Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, these are programs that can be utilized by those who really need a lift up in our society. I've always just felt we're such a wealthy nation. There's no excuse for not helping out those people who need it the most. So I want to go to Kim's news, but I'm wondering if I should do the unboxing now. What should I do? Where are we in terms of Kim, Tony, help me.
We have about 14 minutes until we meet Gil Duran.
Okay.
Kim, how are you?
Gil Duran is terrific. And if you want to know what Elon Musk and the people who populate the administration now, who are tech bros, if you want to know what is really planned, they're the Curtis Yarvin worshiping, they're monarchists, really. They believe that a CEO should run America. America should run more like a business. That's the world of Yarvin and of Musk. Great reporting from Gil Duran on that. So we'll have that in just a few minutes. So we're 14 minutes away from that. Probably now 13 minutes. But yes. And
so I say unbox and then do news.
Okay, we'll unbox and do news. Thank you, first of all, everybody who's shared this show. One of the reasons that we've grown the show, it's a small show. We came out of a radio show in San Francisco. We just moved everybody here. When the radio station literally went away, we were a big, powerful radio station, but the world of media and legacy media is a grim one. And you're seeing radio stations close all over the place, and you're seeing these conglomerates that own a bunch of radio stations just see each one as a line item. So they cross us off. We've got no place to go. We came over here to YouTube, and you've been part of our growth, and I really do appreciate that. So we got to 100,000 subscribers, and then YouTube sent me this this thing, which is a box that I guess contain. I have not opened this box yet. Okay, so I cut it open, but I didn't open it, and so this is a like a protective, and this is a letter.
Oh, we get a letter,
probably from Mr. YouTube or Ms. YouTube.
Exactly.
Let me.
Nah, Susan's not. I don't know who's in charge anymore. Yeah.
This is the okay. I'll read the letter in a second. This is the
Oh, it's silver. Okay.
Oh, that was.
Oh, well, there you go. Well done.
Did you
break it?
I just started I think I started an app on my phone on my computer while I did that.
Is it okay?
Well, I didn't know it was going to fall out.
Oh,
Tony.
okay.
There it is. Can you hear me, or did I?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Can you hear me, or did I mute myself?
No, we got you.
Okay.
We can hear you. Thumbs up. Can you hear us?
Recognize your team. There's something about that.
Nah.
This is
yeah. Recognize your team, Mark.
Yeah, whatever. I don't think they mean you guys.
Oh.
No. There it is, though.
Oh, it's shiny. It's like a big mirror. Nice.
Yeah, very cool. So,
oh, it's beautiful.
It's the okay silver one. Now we got to get the gold one.
Oh,
what does it say on the bottom? What does it say?
Presented to the Mark Thompson Show for passing 100,000 subscribers. Wow, that's very good. Yeah, it is.
So
yeah,
awesome.
Really cool. It really is awesome. Very grateful to everybody who has subscribed. And
we need to put it in front of your pillow back there.
This is the, I'll put it in front of the pillow. This is the YouTube letter. Do you remember your first subscriber? I won't read you the whole thing, but I'll just read it. Do you remember your first subscriber? They start.
Wasn't that you? He's the first subscriber. I think I was number 2.
Your 100th or your 1,000th subscriber. Chances are you do. And we know that you'll definitely remember your 100th, 1,000th subscriber. Your fans may have found you while searching YouTube, learned about you through a friend, or maybe you showed up as a recommended video. No matter how they came to your channel, your audience stayed, and their numbers increased because of you and the community you've built. We're proud to honor you and honor your impressive milestone of reaching 100,000 subscribers with the Silver Creator Award. Congratulations. Thank you. I feel all silvery on the inside and out. Anyway, it goes on, but it's Neil Mohan from, he's the YouTube CEO.
All right.
Yeah. So I'll put that in a place of honor. And there are, we can order copies. That's what this is. Like if you want a copy of it, I can order one.
Oh yeah. Nice. How much is a copy?
I don't know. I'll find out.
I might need one, depending on price.
We'll get it. Yeah, it's the plaque. It has arrived. Thank you, everybody who's... Cheryl said, I definitely had to be one of the first. Yeah, a lot of OGs on the chat. That is certainly true. So, yeah. Gold is 500,000. Wow, that's a long way away. Rhonda says.
I think it's 1 million now.
Oh, is it?
What?
Oh, man.
I don't know. Maybe
Anyway.
that's a different one. Yeah. Either way, we got a ways to go.
Yeah, we do. So we can savor this for the moment, though. Vilma is an OG. Y'all can't afford coffee mugs. That's right. We do have trouble. We can't afford a lot. It's true, but I will tell you that. Gosh, that's good coffee. I just want to say. Thank you. Cameo says I'd go platinum. Right now we're hanging on to what we've got, the silver plaque. So excited. Thank you, everybody who has helped to make it happen. Thank you for smashing the like button. So there is a great conversation ahead with Gil Duran. Gil Duran is a terrific journalist. He has reported on so much in the way of Silicon Valley. He knows these guys who are running our world now. And I mean the world, not just America. As you know, Elon Musk is involved in elections in Europe and beyond. And he has plans, and they have plans for a kind of dominance that I think you'd normally associate with some kind of literary work or film work. I mean, it seems otherworldly, the kind of dominance that's planned, but it's real. And Duran shows the math. So, and he's also worked in politics, so I like that he brings that to the party as well. We'll get to him as we continue. Kim's News. One of the things that got us that silver plaque from YouTube.
Well,
one of the things that got us that is Kim's News. Am I right, people? You know what I'm talking about. Sometimes I don't get to it and I feel bad. But Kim's News helped get us this. God damn it, we're going to get Kim's News on today. Thanks, everyone. News, and then we continue with Gil. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, proud holders of the 100K plaque. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Stocks on Wall Street, as Mark mentioned, are plummeting today. Comes as investors are concerned about a possible economic slowdown after President Trump wouldn't rule out a recession as his tariffs are being put in place. Stocks free falling on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average has been down more than 1,000 points at times today. The Nasdaq has been down over 800 points. S&P 500 has been down well over 2% as well. So things are taking a dive. A hacker group reportedly claiming responsibility for today's X outage. Multiple reports say the group known as Dark Storm has said they're behind the issues suffered by the social media platform formerly known as Twitter today. Elon Musk confirming what he's called a massive cyber attack against X. House GOP members are pushing a bill that would keep the government operating through the summer. Speaker Mike Johnson says he plans a procedural vote on that measure today, and he'll try to pass it tomorrow. Republicans hold a small 218 to 214 House majority. So far, most seem inclined to pass the measure that would keep the government funded at current levels through September 30th. Electricity exports from Ontario, Canada to the United States are being hit with a surcharge. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, pictured here, announced a 25% increase on Monday. This comes as Trump has launched a trade war with Canada by imposing tariffs. 1.5 million Americans in Michigan, Minnesota, and New York get electricity from Ontario.
Listen, the Canadians are not just, I think he thinks that they're patsies and he can just push them around. He's clearly a bully, and he's bullying Canada. And now you're seeing some real pushback. And it's not just rhetorical pushback, as is demonstrated here, but the rhetorical pushback now is real as well. I mean, the Canadians are now not sort of politely saying, well, we hope we can reach some kind of agreement. They're saying, hey, you want to really get into this? Let's bring it on. Canada is not the 51st state, and we're not your bitch, and we will hit you back. And I think that Trump's got to deal with that.
What's next? I mean, maple syrup? That'll be outrageous. The tariff on maple syrup alone? No, I kid. But yeah, Doug Ford not backing down. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says 83% of USAID programs will be canceled. 83%. In a post on X, Rubio said 5,200 contracts were cut that would have cost tens of billions of dollars. The Secretary of State said the contracts do not serve the United States and harm our nation's national interest in some cases. He's not doing very well right now, as apparently a lot of Republicans are not happy with his performance as Secretary of State thus far.
Well, he's quacking now the Trump line. I mean, the USAID dismantling is really pretty weak. I mean, there's not really substantive reason. They've made up a bunch of reasons and shown you a bunch of stuff, the condoms to Gaza and all that crap. It was all BS as we learn. I mean, USAID is such a minuscule number compared to the rest of the budget. Of all the agencies in America at the federal level that you would go after, USAID, it makes no sense. Again, the reason that Musk went after USAID, and that was indeed the first place he went, was because USAID had launched an investigation into Musk and his Starlink use and the shutting down of Starlink by Musk at the behest of the Russians. And that information and that investigation was something that really riled Musk, and he went right after USAID. There's no waste, fraud, and abuse on any level that would even move the meter in Washington from USAID. So there's another reason that Musk is doing it. Same reason he went after the FAA. The FAA was going after him for the rocket explosions that were creating issues as far as air traffic was concerned. Same thing with the EPA. The EPA was after him because those same rocket explosions were destroying fragile habitats, and so on. The IRS. He goes after the IRS because the IRS is involved in trying to get Musk on taxes that he owes from some of his companies, including Tesla. So you see how this is personal for Musk. He's going after each one of these people who inhabit these administrative agencies and decapitating them, and then he eliminates the agency itself, and so on. I could continue. I mean, it's an amazing thing how he has personalized the destruction of the federal government, and believe me, there's a bigger plan ahead, and that's what we're going to talk to Gilda Rand about.
President Trump said there could be more arrests similar to the one of a Palestinian student who protested against Israel at Columbia University. ICE agents took Mahmoud Khalil into custody Saturday night. In a Truth Social post, Trump said there are more students across the country who have engaged in what he said was pro-terrorist, anti-Semitic, anti-American activity, and the Trump administration will not tolerate it.
That's a huge story, by the way. I mean, how you can just erase somebody. It's very Pinochet-like, the way they used to just eliminate people. I mean, it's really a first chapter, maybe, in a troubling narrative that is now emerging in America.
President Trump says he wants to finish a border wall by the end of his second term. We're back to this again. Terrell County Sheriff Thaddeus Cleveland says this should not be controversial. The Texas border lawman says walls have been built by both Republican and Democratic presidents, and work is now underway for a new 18-foot tall border wall in a rural part of South Texas, right near the tip. The Border Patrol said on social media it will replace the current 6-foot tall guardrails in that area.
Oh, my God. I don't know. The whole wall thing is just crazy. I care about the environmental impact of the wall more than anything, but it's clearly, it feels so Trump 1.0, but he's, still on it.
Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is speaking out about the measles outbreak in Texas, now other states as well. He's suggesting that vitamin A can dramatically reduce deaths. Doctors, though, they're afraid some parents might take this as meaning the supplement is the same as the vaccine. It is absolutely not. Dr. Sapna Singh at Texas Children's University Hospital, or Texas Children's Hospital rather, says there is not a single study that suggests vitamins can prevent infections. There are nearly 200 measles cases now in Texas. The epicenter remains a section of West Texas that has the lowest vaccination rates in the state.
Yeah, I mean, this is, we talked to the doctor about this, and Michael Daigneault, and he'll be on next week as well. And he made it clear, because we talked about this already. If there's a vitamin deficiency, then it reflects a part of the body's immune system that might be bolstered, if you will, by, getting that deficiency taken care of with a supplement. But that's not the thing to in any way prevent infection. It's utterly absurd. So, I mean, these are the half-cocked theories that we thought we'd hear, and sadly, this guy's in control of policy.
New Los Angeles District Attorney wants the Menendez brothers to stay locked up until he says they come clean once and for all. Nathan Hochman has opposed a new trial for Lyle and Eric Menendez for the 1989 killings of their parents in their family's Beverly Hills mansion. Today, Hochman says he won't oppose a resentencing hearing, but he does oppose their release until they admit their guilt. Most Americans moved the clocks forward for daylight savings time over the weekend, and hospitals are already preparing to see significant increases in heart attack-related visits today on the first day of the work week. The exact reason isn't clear, but experts think the lost hour of sleep plays a big role disrupting the body's natural rhythm. Some better news, though, experts say fewer fatal car crashes occurred during daylight savings time as the move shifts an hour of daylight into busier evening traffic hours.
It's a World War II thing, and it just, we've got to get rid of it. But
Los Angeles is in big financial trouble, Mark. That according to the city controller, who sent a letter to the mayor and the city council over concerns about Los Angeles's financial issues, says the city is facing a $140 million shortfall in revenue this fiscal year, another $73 million increase next year. The city estimated to overspend by $300 million, and the city controller says that, coupled with the revenue shortfall, is going to make balancing the budget in Los Angeles very tricky.
Well, you people in Los Angeles, you should know one of the real reasons that you're running so far in the red is because of lawsuits. The city of Los Angeles had to pay out so much in lawsuits. It continues to be a real issue.
Lastly, because I know we have Mr. Duran waiting, an investigation continues into a wild incident at an Inglewood CarMax where a disgruntled driver drove through the showroom and injured 8 people. Yeah, there's the video. Look at that. Awful. The incident happened Saturday, with authorities saying the suspect had taken his car to the facility to get an estimate on it. When he didn't like the number he got, the man got into his car, allegedly, plowed his way through the showroom, sending people scurrying for safety. Again, 8 people ended up with injuries. The suspect drove away, but ended up driving right to an LAPD facility and turning himself in. So there you go. Saves him some
and he's
time
really
and trouble.
not going to like the number he gets on the car. Now look at it. I mean, it's all beat up.
Yeah.
I just don't see the logic there. All right. Well,
This report is sponsored by
Sure, it
Coachella
felt
Valley.
good for a second, when you really just, I've had enough of this. You want to drive through your facility, and then, it hits you 11 seconds later. What am I doing?
Impulse control issues. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. The best coffee that has ever passed Mark's lips. The best tea that has ever passed through mine. Please find our discount. It is Mark T at checkout. Mark T will get you 10% off, and you won't be sorry you ordered a little bit of heaven in your cup from CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Oh, yeah.
I saw the Coachella Valley Coffee people at in the desert, not far from their actual place, just a few days ago, and there was a line that was super long to get but they were handling it really fast. She said, yeah, we've got a thing about speed. We want to get everybody through quickly. So CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, best coffee and tea you'll ever taste, and Mark T at checkout for 10% off.
I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Feels great.
When they raided Mar-a-Lago, God didn't like that.
Right on, everybody. I've been wanting to talk to this guy for a while. He has political experience. He's worked in the offices of Jerry Brown as press secretary. He was communications director for Senator Dianne Feinstein. So he has, knowledge of the belly of the beast. But his writings now on the world of Silicon Valley, because again, Gilderon knows so much about this world of these tech billionaires and their plans. It gives him this other perspective, which seems so relevant to what's going on today. The Nerd Reich is something that he writes often on, and he's quite prolific. It talks about the tech authoritarian political plan. And then Frame Lab is I think it's a Substack. I'll ask Gil. It's on political language and political framing, and I support him there as well. How about it for the great Gil Duran, everybody? What's up, Gil?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. The Nerd Reich is super relevant right now because we have this group of people who are based in the tech world, have built their profiles that way, but seem to have moved into, in an aggressive way, control of politics. I wonder if you can speak to that movement and then their strategies moving forward.
Sure. About 2 years ago, I became very interested in some of the discussions going on in the tech world about politics in the future. And I discovered through reading lots of books, listening to their podcasts, listening to their conference appearances and speeches, that there was this interesting ideology forming, which goes as the following, that nation states are going to collapse, that they're not going to survive the 21st century because the information age has changed everything. And that in the absence of collapsing nation states, there's going to be a new form of governance. And it's going to look like smaller territories that are ruled by basically tech billionaires and tech corporations. Some call this the network state, others call it patchworks. Some don't refer to it by name, but the general idea is that democracies and traditional governments like the United States and the countries of Europe are no longer relevant, they're obsolete, and that Silicon Valley has a responsibility to create a new form of governance that basically replaces democracy with tech dictatorship. I wrote a series about this last year for the New Republic. Some of my stories went viral, but for the most part, the mainstream media sort of stayed away from that narrative. But what we're seeing now in Elon Musk, in the Dodge program, I don't call it Doge, I call it Dodge because they're dodging democracy. We see them doing all of the things I talked about in my stories. Not only that, but it's the same group of people doing it. So my job has been to kind of tell people that this is not chaos, it's a strategy when they've been laying out, really, if you look back for the last 30 years.
These are the guys who are the Curtis Yarvin disciples, sort of they're monarchists, really, but they, as these technocrats, they feel that a CEO can best handle things, that, these politicians don't know what they're doing. You need a CEO to run America like a business.
Yeah, but when they say CEO, they pretty much mean dictator. Someone who doesn't have to answer to people, someone who doesn't have to answer to a legislature. Now, that's not the way most capitalism works, but it's certainly the way Elon Musk's companies work, right? He gets to be the dictator, do whatever he wants. He can tank Tesla's stock. No one seems to be moving to fire him. So it's this different idea of what a business is and what a government is. And it's more aligned with what we would consider a dictatorship or a fascist or authoritarian system. And they've been very overt about this. Curtis Jarvin, who you mentioned, is very close to Peter Thiel, who finds him very inspirational. And he's been writing since like the early 2000s about the need to replace democracy with dictatorship and create something he calls patchworks instead, to bring back monarchy, the idea that democracy is dead and not worth saving. But even before then, in 1997, there was a book called The Sovereign Individual that came out, and it predicted that the rise of something called cyber currency would undermine government power and lead to the disintegration of traditional nations. And it was so influential on a guy named Peter Thiel that when the book was reissued in 2020, he wrote the preface for it. So I would encourage people to look up The Sovereign Individual and what it says, because my point has been that there's an ideological project coming out of Silicon Valley that is very dangerous and very anti-democratic. And it's important to see that for what it is. They aren't quiet about it. My journalism isn't based on secret documents or leaked files. This is the stuff they have been putting out into the public sphere for about almost 30 years now. And they've become more intense about it in recent years. And what we saw now with crypto coming in as this massive force in the election, with Elon Musk, a tech CEO, putting himself at the head of our government, is everything they have been talking about. And it's not clear to me why mainstream publications like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post won't say that.
I love that you mentioned this currency, because I was going to get to it anyway, and that you've referenced crypto, because I've always associated crypto with a way to move a lot of money without it really being tracked, But also, if you look at it, excuse me, just had to clear my throat. If you look at it on a national level, they're talking about this reserve of crypto. It makes no sense to me, but it makes no sense financially. It seems to me, I associate crypto as well, maybe you can correct me on this, with, in a way, working against these sovereign currencies. I mean, if you're about strengthening the dollar and the dollar's strength internationally, you don't want to take a big holding in crypto. You don't want to do anything to support crypto. You want to regulate crypto, which is kind of what it was happening before Trump rolled along. So the introduction of a crypto reserve by the U.S. government, to me, works against all of those things that I thought underpinned the economic system.
Definitely. Well, to be clear, they want to undermine that economic system. That's very much a clear and stated goal. If you go and listen to what they're saying in their podcasts, what they're writing in their books, what they're saying in these network state conferences that they're holding, it's very much about that. Crypto's design is anti-government. And the idea from the Sovereign Individual book from 1997 was that these cyber currencies would allow for people to not pay taxes and therefore starve existing governments of necessary revenue, and that this would hasten the collapse of traditional nations. They certainly want to see the dollar replaced with something like Bitcoin instead, which would make them all, by the way, fabulously even more wealthy than they already are, right? But this is not just about money. Remember, these guys have millions and millions or billions and billions of dollars. They've already got the money. Now they want something else. They want power. And I would encourage people to pay attention to that. Crypto is very much about undermining the monetary system. And they want to undermine the monetary system because they want to undermine our democratic structures and our form of government. And again, this isn't me saying this. They're very clear on it. They're saying it out loud.
Is there a sense that they're all incompetents, but we who have built these fortunes and have created essentially the best of society, we know what's best for the world? Does it come from that place?
It's very much an ideology of tech supremacy. They have the idea that since they are so wealthy and are at the head of these technologies, that they have figured out all of history and the future. And the future will be according to what they say it should be. And they view the rise of AI as really cementing this deal, that they will be able to govern everything with AI. They won't need people as much. And you can trace this, well, there's a lot of places you can trace it to. But in the 1997 book, The Sovereign Individual, that Peter Thiel found so influential, it says that basically once the nation states start collapsing and there's no more traditional jobs because of technology, that the world will witness the rise of a so-called cognitive elite who will then be in a position to rule the world because they've learned how to make money off of the new information age and the internet. And that's very much what we've seen. We've seen these people become billionaires or the richest people in the world, largely off of technology and ideas. And wealth now scales much faster than it did in the 20th century. You have people who are just exponentially richer than they used to be. And with that wealth has come a sort of messianic mindset that they must also take over the world. And I think it's important for people to understand that's what's going on. This is not the usual, oh, they want lower taxes and they want less regulation. They want to be in charge. And, this last year, I think people looked at it as sort of conspiratorial. And, if Kamala Harris had won, I would look like a guy who had gone down a deep rabbit hole, looking at a handful of extreme people with weird ideas. But when you turn on the news today, this is what you see happening. And, my role is just to make it clear to people, especially to journalists who are doing a very bad job of telling people the story, that there's a very long track record here of these people talking about doing exactly what they are now doing.
I mentioned that you have a background, you're the opinion editor, I believe, at the Sacramento Bee, but you also did work with Dianne Feinstein's office back in the day, and Newsom as well. I mean, the reason I mention that is I see that as an asset as you evaluate the playing field and the landscape right now, because you have worked in that world that is a more conventional government and politics. How then do you message against this? I mean, it seems as it's kind of like an evil James Bond villain kind of a plan that they have. It would seem to be easy to message against, but because of their money and because of the way we view money as commensurate with success, maybe it makes it harder to message against it.
Well, I think one of the oldest stories in human history is a small group of elites wanting to tyrannize the rest of the population. We see that all through history. History is largely a series of revolutions where the majority of people rebel against the tyranny of the few. And we are very much in that situation now in 2025. I mean, these guys have read science fiction and they sympathize with the villains. They're trying to engineer how we get to all of this dystopias from science fiction. And, every time I write about this, people point out all the different science fiction books where these similar plot lines occur. Well, science fiction gets its ideas from history, feudalism, tyranny, corrupt, evil monarchies, you name it. And so that's very much an old story. And if the Democratic Party can't find a way to tell a story about how the few are trying to oppress the many, using technology and as a weapon, then I'm not really sure what we're all doing here.
Yeah, it's funny too, the sci-fi part of it. I was just arguing with somebody yesterday or discussing it, but it as the more the conversation went on, it seemed like maybe it was an argument, and it was related to Musk's invocation of he invokes Mars, and the kind of like, we're going to go to Mars. Then you hear Trump say, we're going to go to Mars. And that is to me, it's a sci-fi kind of default. Like, we're going to go to Mars because Mars was what you heard about, first the moon, then Mars, and then the rest of the universe type thing. When the reality is, Mars is, even going there is a ridiculous enterprise, and somehow colonizing it is an even more absurd notion. So anyone who knows anything about science can see the absurdity in it. I do see it as a way to pour a bunch of money to Elon Musk, his companies, and clearly there's a shimmer, I guess is what I'm saying, to associated with saying this. We're going to go to Mars. So this Mars thing and stuff like it, I feel captures the imagination of the public. And again, it kind of takes the stink off of people like Musk.
Well, if we wanted to cut government waste and be more efficient, we would stop toying around with the stupid idea of going to Mars. There's no reason why there's any reason to do that. Who voted for that, right? We have a lot of problems here that we could take care of, filling potholes or building more infrastructure because our infrastructure is failing. I think an important element of this is we're going to witness a massive heist in the form of privatization, trying to push government duties toward companies owned by these folks. And we're already seeing that the crypto reserve is largely about making sure these guys make tons of money off of crypto, right? Somebody put a big bet on crypto. Trump says crypto reserve, it goes way up, it goes down again. This is a massive pump and dump scheme and really an eviscerating of the public good to put that wealth and power in private hands. And it's happening very openly. I mean, this term started with Trump making millions and millions of dollars in a meme coin rug pull, a pump and dump scheme. And, if Kamala Harris had done something like that, she would have been driven out of office already by the newspapers. Instead, we all forgot about it within a few days and moved right along. So, Trump has been able to create this disinformation distortion reality field. And, I think it's a big problem, but we have to keep our eye on the ball here. This is about stealing the public good and putting it under private control.
It's extraordinary. By the way, Kim corrects me that you worked for Jerry Brown's office, not for Gavin Newsom's office. So I apologize for that. You're very gracious in not pointing out my error. But I guess I liked that. And again, it doesn't take away from the fact that you are understanding of conventional politics, and that makes you, I think, somewhat unique. It gives you something of a perspective when you have this deep knowledge of these tech titans, and you also have the world of conventional politics. And so, to my question, conventional politics seems ill-equipped right now to do anything. I've never seen. I understand the party being cowed by Trump, but I mean, they're really permitting the dismantling of the entire federal government. And it's not being done in any kind of considered fashion. It is an utter wanton destruction. And I don't see anything in the way of conventional politics pushing back on it.
No, the most we have is Bernie Sanders going around the country holding town halls and listening to angry people. The establishment Democrats seem to be hiding under a rock for the most part. We're not hearing anything from them. No one is coming out to tell people that it's going to be okay, or that we have a plan to win and take our country back. The Democrats seem to think that if they just stand by and hide out, that people will rationally come to the decision that this is all bad and that they should be thrown out in 2026. But they're not factoring in the power of disinformation and narrative control. Believe me, these guys will find a way to say that everything that happened is the fault of Democrats, and a large number of people will believe them because that's the only narrative that they're hearing. We live in an age of narrative warfare, and the first rule of narrative warfare is that it's constant. And so it's shocking to me to see the Democratic Party fall so far. But there's a lot of Democrats who want tech money, who want crypto money, and there's a lot of consultants who in the off election years are working for some of these same guys. So maybe there's a good reason why there's not as much resistance as we would expect to see at a time like this. This is the biggest opportunity the Democratic Party has to make a leap toward progress by showing people what the Republican Party has actually become. And instead, they are complicit in the shadows, hiding out, apparently too scared, too timid, or too lost to say anything about it. And it's really shocking. Where's Kamala Harris? Where's Barack Obama? Where's Joe Biden? Where are all the heroes of the Democratic Party when at the hour when it matters most, right? It's never going to matter again like it matters right now. And so it's really shocking to see. But I'm just convinced that some other thing will rise in its place. Some other leaders will emerge. And that's what we're going to need. The media has also failed. The media is just not prepared for the level of narrative warfare taking place. The tech bros see the traditional media is largely disappearing in the next decade or two. And I can't say that I disagree with that. Because if this is the way things are going to work, they're basically writing their own obituary, both siding fascism and democracy, and kind of unable to really tell people incisively what it is that's happening. That's very obvious. As you said, I come from traditional politics. I come from traditional media. And, it's just mind-boggling to me that the advanced conversation that these tech bros have been having is not something that people are being told about. And if there's some memo as to why we're not supposed to discuss it, I wish somebody would share it with me. I'm a rational guy. Maybe I'll be quiet too, but just tell me,
The capitulation of the media to like the pre-surrendering now, like the don't hurt me, I won't say anything or do anything that calls you out. That's in full swing. I mean, you've seen ABC tap out. CBS finally, after the shakedown, has now been, the Trump lawsuit has now been raised to $20 billion. They kind of have no choice but to push back, or at least go all the way to some kind of legal judgment, or at least threaten that. But everybody else is kind of running scared. And honestly, Gil, I get it. I mean, I get why they're fearful, because these guys think nothing of going after these institutions and people personally who don't play along.
Well, definitely. But, I'm just one guy who has a small newsletter, but I believe in my country, right? I don't see why people who have millions and millions of dollars in revenue and teams of lawyers and teams of reporters aren't doing something about it. I guess in the end, the protecting and defending the supposed greatest nation that ever existed wasn't that important to people. They'd rather keep collecting their six-figure paychecks and feel safe at home, drinking their organic coffees and teas instead of like doing something about it. So, I'm sure that this is going to get really scary at some point. I've thought about that, but someone has to do it. And my hope is that other people will become brave by seeing others model the behavior of what needs to happen. That's all I can really say. I didn't set out to write about this. I kind of fell into this story because I thought there was some really weird stuff that these guys were saying. And I fortunately gave myself a year to do the reading and to immerse myself in their world. I may be writing a book on the subject, which is a new development. But I would just encourage people to dig a little deeper, look up the sovereign individual, look up the network state, and learn for yourself.
Yeah, the sovereign individual, clearly you've referenced it several times. I really want to get on that myself. And the nerdreich.com is the website. So I'm on your Substack also, which is FrameLab, which I really like. You're still active there, right? I think I just saw something that you wrote a couple of days ago.
Yeah. We moved off of Substack to the Ghost platform, which is nonprofit. I think a lot of people don't know Substack is one of the major investors is Mark Andreessen, who is one of the guys behind this stuff. And so it's amazing to me that so many liberal writers are paying 10% of the revenue to the same guys who they're screaming against on their Substack. So, but Substack has become shorthand for a newsletter, but I'm on the Ghost platform. And on the Nerd Reich last week, I wrote a summary of the sovereign individual, the main points from it, so people don't have to read it. But I encourage anybody to go find the original sources, read them, and see if you see something different than I see. Maybe it's all a coincidence that all the stuff they've been talking about seems to be the stuff that they're doing, and I'm open to that. But I think we should at least tell people that coincidentally they've been saying very similar things for a long time. Like I'm a rational guy, and so if you find something that I've gotten wrong, anybody, please tell me. I'm open to criticism.
We have the Nerd Reich in our chat. There's a hot link to it, and we'll also put a link to it underneath this video. Gil, I've got mad respect for you. So glad I could spend a couple of minutes talking to you, and I can't wait to get into some of the writings that you've referred to in this conversation, and I hope you'll come back. Really enjoyed it.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
All right. Gil Duran, everybody. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I promised you that would be interesting, and he's the real thing. And
Can we just have him back like every week? He's amazing.
Yeah. And he's so steeped in what these guys from Silicon Valley are all about. That's what I wanted you to hear. I wanted you to get a real sense for what's happening, because we can talk about what's happening at the federal level. In fact, I'll tell you some of the outrages that get served up day after day after day. But Gil can give you the long plan, and so I'm really glad that that he came through, and we'll have him back.
I think one of the things he said that has been kind of a common theme in the chat is this spinning of the wheels of people being frustrated and no one knowing what to do and no one talking about it and no one doing anything about it. And it's like, do we not care about America? Do we not care that our democracy is going away? Like who's going to stand up? What are we going to do? Why aren't we doing more? And I really felt that from him.
Yeah, really, really good. Glad that he's well received in the chat, and we will have him back for sure. I did have some stuff that I noticed and I thought was worth remarking on. And I did, speaking of things that I noticed, Steve in Toronto, Canada. Oh, no, Vancouver, Canada. Thank you. Steve I. Hello from Vancouver, he says.
Hello, Steve. We're sorry.
Could we
Our apologies.
Can we send an apology letter in advance to you, Steve, and all Canadians? Oh my God.
We didn't vote for him, Steve. We're the good guys.
Well, I don't understand what I mean, is that what these guys voted for? They voted for this smack talking dude who's going to impose these tariffs on, countries that we have a good relationship with. It just seems pretty bizarro, but it does seem to be happening, But as Trump does this stuff, the markets tumble. As you know, we've told you today was another rough day in the world of Wall Street. And we also played you the video of him being asked about recession. That was in the first half hour. And on egg prices, Trump, who promised to cut the cost of groceries on his first day in office, now seems to have a much different take on high prices. Shut up about egg prices. Trump is saving consumers millions.
What
was the headline? That is the headline. He posted it with a link to an article written by Charlie Kirk, who is the right-wing activist that was entertained by Gavin Newsom. Egg prices, of course, meantime, have reached record highs in recent weeks. They average $5 a dozen and $10 a dozen in some parts of the country. And the only reason we concentrate on egg prices is because they made such a big deal of it. I mean, that was their big thing, egg prices, right? But Charlie Kirk is saying that egg prices are not Trump's fault. And look, I was ready to say that they weren't Biden's fault, but you blamed Biden for the egg prices. So what am I supposed to do? I mean, now we're talking egg prices, but all of a sudden it's not Trump's fault. Well, then was it Biden's fault? Of course not.
Well, I thought the day after the election, we were supposed to go to the grocery store and it was supposed to be almost free. Like with your receipt, you get a note from Trump saying, congratulations, you're the recipient of a nearly free grocery bill.
You elected me and now it's good times, right?
No, what happened to that? The day after the election, the economy's better, the eggs are cheaper, the gas is cheaper. No, it isn't.
I was promised the promised land if I elected Trump. And where is it? Meantime, Donald Trump has played golf at his own courses in Florida on 6 of the 7 weekends since his second term began. Well, why not? Give the man some time to kick it. I mean, the country's fine. He's fixed everything. Why can't he go play golf for the weekend? His insistence on playing golf at his Florida courses has now cost American taxpayers, you see, more than $18 million since he regained his presidency.
Someone called Doge.
That's right. Now, if he stays at this rate, Donald Trump on pace in just the golf exhibitions every weekend to spend $151.5 million.
I heard they're going to rip out the Rose Garden. Melania wants to get rid of the White House Rose Garden.
Yeah.
Maybe they can just make it into a golf course and save everyone money.
Oh, that could be. Yeah. Well, he likes his golf, and it's again not the golf. It's the cost of Secret Service. It's the cost of moving that whole world to wherever he is going to show up. But I will mention this. His golf course, now this isn't the one in Florida. I believe this golf course is the one in Scotland. It was targeted by pro-Palestine demonstrators, and they sprayed red paint all over the front of the clubhouse. I don't know if Tony can find it, but it's there. If you click through to that link that's in there, it is. Yes.
Oh, boy, they really did.
Yeah. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it, and if you're just listening, trust me, it is a thorough graffitiizing of that clubhouse. And
I mean, it looks like somebody had a ladder because they got the second story as well.
It's kind of wild that they were able to get that kind of destruction in without anybody stopping them. So,
like, who's paying attention?
It's all splattered in red paint. $60 million golf course being defaced by vandals who are associated with causes related to the Palestinians. And meantime, Zelensky, I should say, he is off to, he was in Saudi Arabia over the weekend to hold talks with officials in the United States. And Moscow, meantime, has gotten rid of 2 British diplomats and accusing the United Kingdom. And, the United Kingdom has said, hey, we're going to support Ukraine. Moscow is accusing them of being instigators in this global conflict. Moscow's already ready to blame everybody but themselves for the war in Ukraine. So since the meeting in the White House, Zelensky has apologized. He wrote a letter apologizing and saying that he is looking forward to both making a deal on the rare earth minerals and also the overall peace deal. I mean, Zelensky can't make a deal that doesn't include some peacekeeping force to make sure that there's no more encroachment from the Russians. We've said that before, and it just has to be. You can't just say, yeah, come, move into my place, take everything that I've got on me, all those minerals, and then you can move into the rest of the rooms in my house when you want to. There's nothing to prevent you from doing that except for a treaty that we had, and you've already violated 2 treaties in the past. So we know that treaties are not worth the paper they're printed on. So it's a pretty grim scene when it comes to the realities concerning what's happening in Ukraine. And speaking of weird, grim scenes, the Department of Homeland Security has begun performing polygraph tests on employees to find leakers. Kristi Noem, everybody's favorite puppy killer, and board czar Tom Homan have blamed the lower than expected ICE arrest numbers on leaks. The leaks about their operations, and they're giving polygraph tests to employees to figure out who might be involved in leaking this information. They say the Department of Homeland Security is a national security agency. We can, should, and will polygraph personnel. Kristi Noem was saying, we have identified 2 of the leakers who've been telling individuals about our operations and putting law enforcement lives in jeopardy. We plan to prosecute these 2 individuals and hold them accountable for what they've done. It was not clear if those 2 employees that she was talking about had been identified through a polygraph test, but they now will have to be polygraphed if you work for the Department of Homeland Security. And I'll remind you, that's a huge organization, although I'm sure they're most concerned with those who are involved in these kinds of deportation efforts. And if you don't agree to the polygraph test, you could face termination. Termination is kind of the favorite pastime of government now in Washington, as you are aware. They are dumping so many federal employees without regard to how critical they are in terms of the future of the federal government. They have, it seems, as part of the frenzy to push and end remote work for the federal governments, the VA is forcing therapists, and this is going to sound bizarre, but I'm going to tell you, the VA is forcing therapists to provide mental health counseling in open cubicles that are there at the federal level. These are therapists who work for a network of clinical resource hubs. They're operated by the VA. And now, of course, since this edict to come in person, they are now required to work in person, but the facilities don't have enough private offices to work in person to do your counseling. So the VA therapists are, despite the fact that there are ethical considerations and legal considerations of conducting these kinds of therapy sessions out in the open, they're having to perform all of these various interactions that are part of their job in an open cubicle.
I'm not sure if that's legal or not, because don't you have to ensure patient privacy?
Exactly. That's why I say it runs afoul of ethics and the law.
Yeah.
But, they proclaimed, and they did this, the VA Secretary Doug Collins proclaimed all across the county, VA employees are coming back to work. We're phasing out remote working and teleworking and bringing everyone back in. And they didn't make accommodations for all of this. They said they were going to, but they didn't. So now it's being revealed that these open cubicles are the place where they're doing so much of this mental health therapy. And as Kim has noted, and as I noted also, there are ethical and legal exposures associated with this. And it really is it's a violation of HIPAA therapy requirements and all kinds of sort of reasonable notions even about, what therapy is about. So that is the very latest with that. Bringing people back in, but at the same time, not really having the infrastructure to handle people coming back in. The what's happening north of the border is wild. Mark Carney is going to replace Trudeau, and I mention Mark Carney because he's a smack talker like Trump is. You saw what he said or heard what he said, Kim. He was like, I'm not gonna take lying down what the Americans are doing to us. Right?
No, he said he refuses to kneel and be conquered.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and he's good to say that. I mean, Trump should be, as I was mentioning before, he should be reminded constantly, dude, this isn't a game. You think you're, the president of the world, you're not.
He also said the United States is a country we can no longer trust.
That certainly is true. He may ask for an election, and there he could. It's thought that he could face some competition that could be pretty stiff competition, conservative leaders. But that said, he may have helped to burnish his image with these remarks that Kim has just mentioned,
Let me also mention this, because the other day I said Canadians they play hockey. They're really good fighters. And I love that he said this. He said, we didn't ask for this fight, but Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves. So Americans, they should make no mistake. In trade, as in hockey, Canada will win.
Oh, I do love that's exactly what you said. That's
just
exactly
saying,
what
like
you
they're gonna slap you with a stick. You better watch it.
The Supreme Court is going to take up state bans on conversion therapy for LGBTQ plus children.
I thought it was 2025 and we were way past that. No?
It's a case from Colorado, Kim, to decide whether state and local governments can enforce laws that ban conversion therapy for LGBTQ plus children. Now, again, conversion therapy is not transition, okay? Conversion therapy is the, my son is gay and I'm going to, some of the ways in which, in the modalities of, quote, therapy that they have are horrifying. They're medieval.
Torture.
It's torture. It's torture.
Yeah, it's how bad can we F up people that are different? That's what
exactly
it is.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the conservative-led court, as noted here, is taking up the case amid actions by President Trump targeting transgender people, including a ban on military service and an end to federal funding for gender-affirming care for transgender minors. The justices have heard arguments in a Tennessee case, Kim, over whether state bans on treating transgender minors violate the Constitution, but they have yet to issue a decision on that. But Colorado is roughly, it's among roughly half the states that prevent the practice of trying to change a person's sexual orientation or gender identity through counseling. Okay, so it's not allowed in Colorado. The issue is whether the law violates the speech rights of counselors. Defenders of laws like this say they regulate the conduct of professionals who are licensed by the state. In other words, if you are a licensed conversion therapist, then it should be legal for you to do your conversion therapy. Again, I think it is horrifying. It is medieval. It is torture, as to use Kim's word. And I agree. It is that. And yet, somehow, if there's a deputized professional doing that which I've just talked about, it's okay. I remember reading about a therapy that was, they did it in Indiana, I think, under Pence when he was governor. And, they roll the kid up in a carpet and they beat him with, it's unbelievable. It's the sort of thing that you never thought in an evolved society you would ever see. But again, we're devolving, it seems, these days more than we are evolving. And so, pretty crazy. If you missed the Social Security conversation, you should go back and listen to it. We did it in the first half hour. Alex Lawson is a brilliant mind on Social Security, and we'll have him back as well. So when it comes to Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, you must listen to Alex talking about that. And this just in the world of Medicare and Medicaid from Fortune magazine. The HHS workers who research diseases and inspect food and administer medicine and Medicare and Medicaid, they're offered buyouts. So HHS, the one run by RFK Jr., just like the rest, seems to be succumbing to a dismantling. Most of the 80,000 federal workers responsible for researching diseases, inspecting food, and more under Medicare and Medicaid, under the auspices, I should say, of Health and Human Services, emailed an offer to leave their job for as much as $25,000. It is part of the government cut that Elon Musk and his pal Donald Trump are making. Workers have until 5 p.m. Friday of this week to make that decision. RFK Jr., Trump's health secretary, has hinted at plans at deep cuts to the staff. He promised to immediately clear out all 600 employees at NIH. That's the biomedical research arm of the federal government. They do amazing things. And I've talked before about the fact that they are doing some breakthrough cancer research right now, research in Alzheimer's that seems as though it's closer. I mean, to be fair, we've seemed as though we're close to breakthroughs in those areas before. We don't know what's going to happen. But the idea that you could just pull the plug, again, it's willy-nilly pulling the plug. You pull the plug on everything, you're turning everything off. Now, he hasn't yet gotten rid of all the employees at NIH, but we'll see what happens. He says, I have a list in my head. That's a quote. So Musk and Trump have been trying to push out federal workers everywhere and without regard for how critical the work they do is.
How could he have a list in his head? He doesn't even know those people. What has it been, a month? Less than that since he's even been there?
Yeah.
You have a list in your head.
Yeah, it's
worms in your head is what you have.
It's extraordinary. It really is extraordinary. And I'm astounded by how unchecked these guys are. Mostly by, as I've said, everybody goes, why aren't the Democrats doing anything? Why aren't the Republicans doing something? The GOP is in control. I mean, they are dismantling the federal government. They're defunding programs that you can't defund unless typically you go through Congress. Congress is asleep at the switch. I mean, they see what's happening, and Congress is unable and unwilling to push back on Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Mostly, I would say, and this is the scary thing moving forward. I like to always leave everyone with something scary. Mostly because Elon Musk has so much money that he really can begin to go after primaries. They can primary anybody who speaks up against them. And now he's going up against judgeships. So this complete takeover of government, both at the federal level, state level, and even local levels beyond that, it's very Koch brothers from one standpoint. I mean, if you read Dark Money, the Jane Mayer book, she talks all about it, how that Koch brothers money, right-wing money, is getting into academic institutions from high school, colleges, and postdoctorate programs to politics, the way we all know, in taking over in primaries and in judgeships. As I say, that's the next big thing. Once you get the courts, you really have everything. I mean, the dominion over it all is complete, and that is part of the plan. That's why I was glad we held Gil Duran on today to talk about all of that. So, happy Easter, everybody. Yeah, all right. Enjoy it. Yeah. Goodbye, Medicaid and Medi-Cal if HHS is dismantled. Exactly. Many of the employees who are involved at HHS are involved with just that, Medicaid and Medi-Cal. That's right. Stop saying it's the Congress. It's the GOP in Congress, says Nevitz Forever. Yeah, Musk going after governors, going after judges, etc. Thank you, Lacumeka. That's exactly right. And If we're all about saving cash, why is puppy killer Kristi Noem on TV every 10 minutes praising Donald Trump and encouraging self-deportation ads in L.A.? That can't be cheap. Thank you, Luis, for that. I'll tell you, not only is it not cheap, but I thought we did the story, but maybe not, about how much it is. It's expensive. That is an effort on the part of Kristi Noem, and that is coming out of her budget at the Department of Homeland Security to buy media across the country talking about how effective the Donald Trump plan for deportation is. That is a true ad campaign that they are running with ads that were produced by the Department of Homeland Security, and now there are media buys, and there it is. Thank you, Tony. The, what does it say? DHS announces a nationwide and international ad campaign warning illegal aliens to self-deport and stay out. It's not only national, it's international. So that's the that's the reality of Noem's plan.
If running that international is, I mean, might as well just film her rolling up the welcome mat and walking away, right? Don't even think about America, people.
Well, I mean, I understand the desire to keep the immigration legal. I even understand the desire to communicate that we want legal immigration in this country. But that is done in ways other than producing spots and running them nationwide and internationally, I'd suggest. I mean, the word is out. You don't need to worry. The word is out. You know, Trump's a ball buster on the border. GOP is, they're ball busters on the border. That word is out. You don't need to spend an S pile of money to get it out. Luis says we're going to Mars, M-A-R-S, mass accumulation of resources secretly. Exactly. Eliminating oversights and regulations under use of cost cutting equals the fuel. Yeah, I think that that's a good point. I mean, I think that there obviously are huge steals going on by Musk right now. Part of the steal is to fund the ridiculous Mars program. It's absurd. The other ridiculousness, just as we're talking ridiculous and things that we've referred to today, is that crypto thing. It's absurd to have a crypto reserve. It's absolutely absurd. I had a friend share an MTS video with me last week. I felt like a proud mom, says Becky E. I love hearing that. The way that we grow this channel is by sharing on social media. So we'll put out the videos today. Tony will, drop the conversation with Gil, the conversation with Alex, a conversation with Gary. Right, Tony?
I'll think about it.
Okay.
Thanks, Tony. Of course I will. Right at 3 o'clock, everybody. Everyone knows the
3
deal.
o'clock, everything drops, and then you can share it across the spectrum of social media. Yeah. Ads running in Michigan also, says Nancy. Yeah, I believe it. Easter is 4/20. Is that right? Mary Baca says Easter is 4/20.
It's going to be an interesting Easter.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a great way to it's a great way to go for Easter lunch. A little bit buzzed. Am I wrong? There it is. Sunday, April 20th, 2025. Get your 420 on. Are you kidding me? I am I don't know.
Careful with the edibles.
Yeah, you got to be careful. You can't
Stay at home and get baked.
You can't dial in the edibles quite the way I'd like, but I do enjoy the once in a while.
Your Honor, I'd like to ask for a recess.
All right, okay, I'll move on.
Did you hear the story that Elon Musk is calling Senator Mark Kelly, who's I believe he is a decorated veteran.
My God, yeah, he's the astronaut.
He's calling him a traitor because he went to Ukraine. Yeah.
That's just,
I can't even.
It's crazy how completely
yeah
in the Russian camp Trump is now.
Kelly went to Ukraine over the weekend, and he urged the United States to stand with Ukrainians against continued Russian aggression. Musk told the senator, "You are a traitor."
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Well, Mark Kelly is pretty terrific, I have to say. So I'm kind of on Mark Kelly's team on that. I did want to read an email. It was a negative email. Let me see.
Oh, no.
I know, weird. It wasn't negative. It was somebody who is really, first of all, I do appreciate a couple of new Patreon subscribers as we finish up here. I just want to acknowledge Patreon and PayPal. What's that?
Can we just send the sender of the negative email? Just take a picture of the plaque and send it back in response.
Well, no, I mean, I'm open to.
There you go.
I'm open to criticism. I am, and I think I'm pretty tough on myself. So, but Pamela, thank you for being a new member of our Patreon community, and our Patreon community.
Big shout
out to Pamela. She's
thank you, Pamela.
Last names just to avoid her being whatever. But Pamela came in a $10 membership, $10 a month. It really, really matters. Thank you. And by the way, if you do go to Patreon, you want to go through our link underneath all our videos, or if you're listening, it's the MarkThompsonShow.com, the MarkThompsonShow.com, and there's a link to Patreon that way. Don't go through the Patreon app, because the App Store takes 30% if you go through the app. So stay off the app and go right through the web. I've gotten some recommendations as to people that we should have on the show, and I've followed up on those. And I've often wondered, Carolyn asks, what Trump has on all these Republicans. We know some people like Lauren Boebert are just plain stupid, but I wonder, did he have Pecker and Roger Stone get information on a lot of others? Or is he so popular with his base that he can call these Republicans and tell them that he has the goods on them, and then they repeat something like Pizzagate? And they all know that his base will believe it, so they walk his line. We need to know if there's a kind of a Pecker, Pecker was the Inquirer.
Oh, I thought you were talking about something else.
I see. No, it's not that.
Sorry, I'm 12. Yeah.
On Catherine Stewart, who we had last week, Steven says, thanks for having her on the show. She is great, and I think I'll purchase her book. Unfortunately, I think it's nearly impossible to convince these Trump people into seeing reality. My several years of working in mental health taught me that delusional people are resistant to treatment. Also, people are generally hesitant to admit they were scammed, fooled, or cheated. That's certainly true. I don't think there is any hope, he says. When millions vote for a man that ran 6 businesses into bankruptcy because he is, quote, successful businessman, we are doomed. No, that's nice. I always feel like if you can end an email with "we are doomed," it's a good way to finish to stick the landing. Look, what you've said is true. There's a lot of ego. I've talked about it before. I don't think it's not an idea original to me, but I'm saying that we do touch on the fact that there's a lot of ego involved in choices we've made, right? We get wedded to a choice, and it's very hard to disabuse of some notion because we have a large part of ourselves, a connection to that choice we made. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say, I'll give you. I mean, obviously, the Trump thing is a great example and a clear example. You can not get these MAGA people off of that. But if you're vegan, you're asked sometimes, hey, how come you're vegan? And people ask it out of the blue, right? And you say, well, I'm vegan because I didn't want, when I found out how they really treat these creatures and really what's involved, I just didn't want to be part of it anymore, and I didn't want to support it anymore, and so I don't have any product from an animal. And the person asking the question oftentimes gets defensive about the fact that they're not vegan, even though the person who answered the question didn't say, and you should be too. You know what I mean? I've been party to so many of these conversations because there's a sense of ego associated. When I say ego, I just mean a sense of self, a connection to that choice that's been made. And so you can show them all the cruelty associated with animal abuse and the ways that these creatures are horrifyingly treated, how it's worse than any torture film or whatever. But oftentimes, the more you show them, the more they cling to the choice they've made. well, if everybody became vegan, blah, 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 we wouldn't have enough plants to support it, whatever they say. So the same thing is true, I think, in the case of any number of choices we make. We make choices in our lives, and there's a piece of ourselves, a piece of ego associated with a lot of the choices. And it's hard oftentimes to have an open mind about it. And it's certainly true in our politics. We are dug in. And so when it comes to actually, I mean, the MAGA diehards, you're never going to move them off the ball. But those people who are on the edges, and I feel as though these elections now, moving forward, if we have fair elections moving forward, they will be on the edges that they'll be decided. So that's really the crew you should concentrate on. If you're talking to somebody wearing a red hat that says, "Make America Great Again," you're wasting your time. I mean, I'm not saying that that person's a bad person, like from the standpoint of, you know, any number of things. I'm sure they'd still help you get your car out of the snow or whatever it might be. And it might be, and I'm sure you would help that person on an individual level. But all I'm trying to say is if you're really trying to punch through conceptually with evidence of the wanton destruction of government, the utter lunacy of trade wars, whatever it might be, if you're really pointing to these things, the Ukraine situation, how massively destabilizing for the world this is going to be, how this guy could be really bringing us to the brink of war. I mean, it's going to be hard to punch through. So I think this guy's right, the mental health professional that wrote into us. Was it Michael? Was that his name? Anyway.
So we're going to end the show on doom, huh?
No. Let me see if I can find a positive email. Let's see. Somebody said, D said, how about a show dedicated to answering our cries of what we can do and ways to fight back?
All right.
That's good, but I will say this, the Democrat offer concrete ways to unify the Democratic Party or work to forming a new party, what strategies will work, who we should follow. Love you and the team. Thank you, D. I'm going to say two things. First, of course, that's a good idea. But secondly, I don't know if you've noticed, but I really try almost always to ask about strategies for pushing back and how to communicate. Almost always. Like, I that's because I don't want to be just, this is wrong and that's wrong and we're all screwed and, oh my God. I mean, we might all be screwed. It might be. But I still want to explore ways in which we can push back, even as we're being screwed. So I think we on this show try to do that, is my point. I really try to ask, what strategies can we employ, political and otherwise, to actually push back on these things that seem to be happening without regard to the results. So I hope we're doing that already, I guess is what I would say. But also, more and more activists on this show who can point to decent political strategies. I think that is something we'll try to do more of in the future. So again, our email is themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I must wrap up. I have, I'm saddened by wrapping up. I don't like to wrap up.
Me too.
Yeah. Mark, can you please comment on Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick's ridiculous appearance yesterday on Meet the Press? Michael D says, I'll tell you what, I'll dust that off, and Tony, we'll play that tomorrow. We'll actually comment on it, so thank you for that. Brandon says, I wish I knew the number I was as a subscriber. I would make a badge. I know I was an early adopter. I like that. I listened to you for a long time on KGO. That's very cool. Brandon says, thank you for that. Thanks to everybody who helped get us to 100,000. We're now at 110,000 subscribers, and the sky's the limit. Kim's doing the after party live next, and Shadow, if you will.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Good show. I felt good about it.
Bye-bye.
Out of time. Bye-bye.